classes have been studying is kind of how the universe works. And I'm going to talk to you first about how a person works, and then about how the universe works, and let you see that they're kind of one and the same thing. So when you're working with a person, yeah, come up here for just a moment. All right, when you look at her energy structure, what's in it? What do you see? Not her emotions, her thoughts. I don't want you to look at that. Look, what is her structure like? So she has crown chakra, brow chakra, throat chakra, heart chakra,
solar plexus,
third chakra, a second chakra, a first chakra. That one runs into the ground. That one goes straight up, and a core running down through the middle of her that runs all the way into the ground. And there are tubes that feed out of those chakras that go to different parts of her body. If you're looking at that with your psychic eyes, you can see all of that going on. There are also subtle bodies in her aura that extend out this way, and tubes that run from subtle body to subtle body all the way out. But that does not end her connection. It keeps running out. And as she develops, these chakras tend to change. As she integrates information from her crown, her root will end up looking like her crown and have as many petals. So there is development that occurs in all of her chakras. Also, if you turn her this way, the chakras extend out from the core this way and this way. And it comes out here and it does this. But all of these subtle bodies are rotating around her as well. And there are multiple flows of energy inside of her. She has energy running from shoulder across here to hip, down her leg, back up, back over her head, and that way. She has energy that comes up her spine and comes out like this and runs back down her, and I often call those the angel wings, and it does it on both sides. If she develops her chakras enough, they'll also rotate like this around her. And at her core, there's energy that runs down the inner part of her core, flows down it, reads all the coding inside of her core, goes way all the way down, comes back up, reads the coding on the other side, and a simultaneous flow that's happening in the nervous system, and then a flow that interacts those two pieces of information. And that's when energy's flowing good. You can also see her meridians if you look. Hi there, have a seat. Good to have you. So she exists at multiple levels. If you go out more, you can see that there's a chakra ever so often above her head. If you keep going down, you can go down, and there are 1,000 chakras or more that go down below her feet, which is her consciousness existing at multiple levels. Come on in. And the universe works pretty much the same way. Have a seat. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, in looking at the universe, universe is one. But there is a multiverse that we exist in. And you could think of it like her as being all those different levels of consciousness. And everything exists in a stream of light. the individual line of light that runs down through Kara and is her core, where does it come from? How does that work?
Comes from the ceiling.
Pardon me?
From the ceiling.
Couldn't hear. From the city? Well, yes, and beyond.
There's not much we can go.
So,
to the ceiling.
what I've been working with lately, and again I'm teaching this to some people as well, is that there is a strand of energy that is, in general, the stream of life. And it's ever flowing, it's constantly going. And up and down the stream of life, there are openings that exist front to back. And that as we, as these openings work, universes develop from those openings based on the feeding in or a stream of light specific to that universe coming in and holding the space for it to accumulate around. And this is about things coming into form. So that line that runs through Kara is very similar to this. She exists on a beam of light that is never ending, and she forms around it. But if it is never ending, it exists in other places besides this universe. And so she is a multiverse herself, just as our concept of form has multiverse associated with it. When this universe is born, there's a corresponding universe over here. So that begins to look like the chakras front and back. And when something happens in here, there has to be a corresponding change there. And there are beings who control the flow of how much energy exists in one of these universes at any given time. And this original stream, you could also say that it issued forth from the mind of God, but really the whole thing is a concept in the mind of God, which has to do with all of us holding the need to come into form. Meaning that each of us has chosen to come into form. So we take our individualized stream that exists in the totality of the stream of life, and we build our form around it. And it, just as I was showing Kara, all these connections running out, it's the same appearance. All these connections run out this way, and each of them is the stream of every piece of consciousness that's going to go into making this universe. Yes?
Is this like macrocosm, microcosm, or is it equal? Are both equal?
The universe exists inside of you, and you are a replica of the universe. It can only be that way, and when people say there's just one spirit, that's really what they mean. All of this is the one spirit. Each of us existing as a point of consciousness within the one spirit, but all of us existing in every point of consciousness. So when we began to channel, we're interacting with those other points of consciousness, but all of them are also us. So I'm probably making it seem more complicated than it is. when this universe gets born, there's a corresponding burst of energy here. And this begins to expand outward. The same is true when you were born. Your energy, when you're smaller, your aura is not usually really expanded, but as you grow, you expand, and your aura expands and gets larger. And the interactions become more complicated as time goes by. As a child, you're really working on your root chakra primarily at first, coming to know what the world feels like and how to live in it. And the same is true of when a universe is first born. It keeps expanding outward until it has completed a cycle. Everything has, all things that exist in form have a life cycle. Even the universe has a life cycle. When we complete that life cycle, all consciousness is circular, and thus everything goes in cycles, including our forms. Then when we've completed that life cycle and our form, we're done with it, then the form falls apart and we go incorporate somewhere else and rebuild form. But the process, if you got on top of it and looked at it, would look more like this. That's the layout in a line. When you get on top of and look down at the way things are created, so as these universes, with those being the universes, and this being the level of consciousness that those universes are existing on. So there's an inner dynamic that is occurring with all of these universes. And if I looked at this and looked at you and looked at your chakras, each of those in you would be a level of consciousness. So your consciousness at any given time, if you're looking at your form, is all those different pieces, like your body's talking to your mind's talking to your emotions, talks to your soul, talks to your connection to the infinite spirit that you are, with the understanding that the soul part of you is still developing. Spirit already is developed and has no need to. And these would correspond to the different vertebra that you have and the nerve roots that come out of that vertebra. So when you're looking down on it and you see these multiple levels of consciousness, and you realize that these are universes and you're built like the universe, then you begin to see how many places that you can exist. If you go far enough out and look back, it's not just lone strands, but this whole level of consciousness is a stream of life force as well. Remember I said the chakras can rotate this way. These can rotate that way. And within this grouping, that would have the feel of a certain reality. In this grouping, that would have the feel of an alternate reality. Within this grouping, a feel of an alternate reality. And there's movement up and down it. Wherever this universe is, well, the stream of life is constantly moving. So at some point, it's going to feel like it migrates through these levels of consciousness, each one evolving. And that has a cycle in it. As this universe was being born and went out this way, it's still expanding outward and will continue to do so until it finishes its cycle. When it finishes its cycle, it collapses back in on itself, goes into the stream of light and bursts forth again, reborn. All of us do the same thing. And when it comes back in here, there is a consolidation of information followed by a big bang. And a switching. And that creates an infinity symbol. Yes?
Is our higher self occupying another form in parallel universe at the same time that we
Our self is occupying every form,
at the same time?
everywhere, at the same time. But because we're serving as a placeholder in form, I don't even know if I can draw that out. But you're here and you're everywhere at the same time. And to call anything a past life is a total misnomer. It's every life being lived at the same time. But the pattern, because we're linear thinkers, it's very hard for us to think that way. We're not multiverse thinkers. For a reason, we're meant to hold a pattern together. And so our consciousness, when you join all of this together, for instance, if you took just one universe, if you took just one universe, it would look like a chakra. And at the center of it would be the place, the portal, where the energy comes in from the stream. And then there would be the development of petals. Each of these has an overseer and a form of consciousness that is like a guiding presence for each quadrant of the universe. But we are continuing to develop other petals that I haven't gotten to all of those yet in order to talk to everyone there. There's a gatekeeper here that controls how much of this comes into the universe, this being one of the universes, at any given time. Because the whole purpose of those gatekeepers is to maintain balance between this and this and this and this. There has to be equal amounts of energy everywhere, or the form collapses in. So as long, and begins, the reality will fall apart. So maintaining that balance is a being that is that has no emotion, cannot be swayed by anyone's emotion, cannot be swayed by anyone's thought, whose only job is to say, okay, a star died here, that's an energy that's gone out of the universe. I'm going to rebirth that star over there, and then bring this star that died back over here as a nebula, in order to maintain the balance of form. Does everybody get that? So there's beingness working to do that for you as one of these strands within the universe, which is a level of consciousness, and then you as every level of consciousness at once. Very hard to stay out there and maintain that, though, because when we talked about being a placeholder in the universe, all the interconnecting lines of energy allow for form to accumulate around it. So this would be your stars and your planets and you. And at any point in form, whether you see yourself as a star or a planet or an ant or whatever, you maintain a place and a function and a part of the pattern that is the creation of that universe. So you tend to think from that place that you're holding, but you're not just there. You're also in every one of these holding place with another part of your consciousness, and in other parts of this holding place with another part of your consciousness for form to exist. And some people lose track of the place they're holding, and they may appear insane to other people. Not all insane people have that problem. Everyone who has a mental issue has a different reason for their mental issue. But I have seen people who've lost their sense of place in the universe. It's very confusing and disorienting if you're seeing it all at once. Yes?
Can we learn to see or to connect our manifestation of ourselves, I guess is what it is, in these alternate realities?
Going back through your past lives
Yeah.
is a form of learning to see some of this.
Can we learn to be sort of like consistently communicating?
Yes. But remember, you're a placeholder for the here and now. And the spark of consciousness that you have placed at this point in time is busy doing something. It's maintaining a connection across the universal grid. That's the spark of consciousness that you think of as you. But your consciousness is far more vast than that. So you really can encompass all of this. But if you spend your time talking to yourself, 3 universes down and 7 universes down and 15 universes over, and you haven't readied your body for that surge of energy or your brain for that type of communication, you're going to be very disoriented. Yes.
How about angels and archangels? How do those beings fit into this? And do,
Just like we do.
really?
At some part of you, you are those things. You're every level of consciousness. Do those beings exist in form like you do? You're probably going to see them. You may see them and they may look like they're in form, but that's your mind turning them into something you can translate. Their energy, but so are you. And at the level of consciousness that exists, there's a part of you there as well. That line of beingness that runs through everything that is your consciousness and is connected to everything else. You can spread your consciousness across that, and basically it's the grid work that form exists on. You can spread your consciousness across those lines, and you can see every life that ever has been and every will be, all happening simultaneously, all holding space within a big ball of consciousness That is all of us doing our job as placeholders in the universe. So eternal life begins to take on another concept. Even now, some of you are struggling with the concepts because we tend to think linearly. And if I shift my consciousness and I look out, what I see is myself staring back at me from everywhere, because I put my focus on seeing me. And if I shift my focus a little more, I can divide it up and say, oh, those are the ones that appear to be in the past, by just putting a barrier up there and say, oh yeah, I've been that, been that, been that. But really, you've been everything. Therefore, when you go up to that other level, all you get is you staring back at you from everywhere. It's just you. And yet it is everything. And each of them part of this mind of God consciousness. Each of them you, and yet each of them unique and individual. All at the same time. So I have had so many people come to me and tell me about a past life that they lived. And I'll sit there and say, well, last week another person came and told me about the same past life. And the reason for that is energy accumulates around certain points in the ebb and flow of this. And so a lot of consciousness goes to certain places and less consciousness goes to other places. And when we all think we've had a unique and individual past life, sometimes there have been many souls, many pieces of consciousness accumulating there, observing what was happening in order to retain the experience and cause something else to unfold in reality. Everybody can't be Cleopatra, and yet everybody is. And so was the individual piece and placeholder of energy that you are today Cleopatra? No, you were here holding this place, but your mind can go back to all these other places, over to all these other places, and into the future in all these other places, and look at the patterns. And some of them will be very strong to you because they relate to the experience that you're having as the spark of consciousness holding this place, sitting your bohunky in that chair. Yes.
So when somebody's reading a past life for you, or telling you, I see that in a past life you were such and such, what is really happening here?
They're moving at through the crisscrossing lines and finding the information that's pertinent to you where you are right now. And based on the pattern that you've created for your existence in the moment that is right now. They're finding that and then finding the pattern of other existence, all yours, all everybody's, and telling you what you need to know in order to let something shift in you now, so that the whole of everything, all the multiverses, have healing happen in them. When consciousness grows, it grows. It goes everywhere. When healing happens in one person, it goes everywhere.